Kirsty Carlis didn't go to bed. By the time Christmas Eve thinned the streets and pulled people home, she was still out, still moving, still awake in a way that no longer felt normal. Most of the town had already decided the night was over. Curtains drawn, lights dimmed, doors locked. She hadn't. Phones were out, drinks kept coming, conversations drifted past her without ever quite landing. Alcohol softened the edges but left the center exposed. Cocaine kept her alert, fixed on details she couldn't let go of. She checked her phone again, and then someone held a screen in front of her. Not dramatically. No announcement. Just a phone, tilted slightly toward her face. A dating profile. Lewis. His name was there. His face. A version of him that looked calm, open, unburdened, public, available. As if nothing had weighed him down at all. The room didn't change. Kirsty did. It wasn't shock. That had already passed in quieter moments. This was recognition. The certainty that while she was still circling the ending, he had already stepped beyond it. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. She went very still, and somewhere in that stillness, a decision began to take shape. When a relationship doesn't end, Kirsty and Louis weren't together anymore, but the relationship hadn't stopped moving. It lingered, in arguments that replayed themselves long after there was no one left to argue with, in messages written, deleted, rewritten, in memories that arrived without warning and refused to stay in the past. They had never been quiet together. The relationship burned hot and uneven. When it worked, it filled everything. When it didn't, it left damage behind. Breaking up didn't erase that history, it rearranged it. Lewis left. He went to stay with family in Norton Keynes. It wasn't permanent, but it was stable. He slept in a conservatory, adapted just enough to be comfortable. Temporary, but safe. Close to his children. Close to something that felt like normality. Kirsty stayed where she was, surrounded by reminders. By rooms that still held arguments in their corners. By silences that felt less like peace and more like accusation. To her, the ending didn't feel mutual. It felt unfinished. The screenshot. The dating profile wasn't new, but that night it felt final. Alcohol blurred proportion, cocaine sharpened focus. The profile stopped being information and became proof. Proof that Louis wasn't waiting, proof that he wasn't struggling the way she was, proof that whatever pain she was carrying wasn't shared. Screenshots were taken, old messages were pulled back up, conversations replayed, edited and re-edited until they confirmed what she already believed. This wasn't curiosity, it was fixation. Kirsty didn't message him. She didn't ask where he was. She didn't wait for the feeling to pass. She opened an app. She ordered a taxi. A line crossed. Moments that only gain meaning later, when everything else has already happened. Kirsty went to a kitchen. She picked up a knife. It wasn't chosen for effect. It wasn't symbolic. It was ordinary, familiar, something designed for a completely different purpose. She didn't weigh it in her hand. She didn't test it. She just didn't put it back. That was the line. The taxi ride. The taxi arrived on time. The driver didn't know her, didn't know what she was carrying, didn't know that the route he was about to take would later be traced, minute by minute. They drove through streets emptied by the calendar. Houses glowed briefly as they passed, then slipped back into darkness. Christmas lights blinked in windows without witnesses. Kirsty sat quietly. No phone calls, no music, no visible panic, just distance closing. What she took with her. The knife stayed hidden. It wasn't mentioned. It didn't need to be. It existed as an unspoken certainty, shaping the night without being acknowledged. When the taxi pulled up in Norton Keynes, Kirsty paid and stepped out. The engine faded. The street returned to stillness. Sleeping in the conservatory. Louis was asleep. He had no reason not to be. He had spent the day preparing for Christmas. He had plans for the morning, children to see, normality to reclaim. The conservatory wasn't luxurious, but it was quiet. It offered distance from a relationship that no longer belonged to him. He didn't know Kirsty was nearby. There was no warning. The door in the dark. The house was quiet. Kirsty entered. What was said between them would later be pulled apart in courtrooms and headlines, but the shape of it was familiar. Accusation, shock, a confrontation that neither of them had prepared for in the same way. This wasn't a conversation meant to resolve anything. It was a collision. The knife came out. Seconds that matter. There was no prolonged struggle, no dramatic escalation, one movement. The injury was fatal. Louis collapsed, Silence followed, sudden and unnatural. Kirsty didn't stay. She left the house. Outside, the village remained unchanged. Christmas morning was minutes away. After the noise stopped, Kirsty walked away. She didn't scream. She didn't run. As the adrenaline faded, reality pressed in slowly, heavily. Behind her, Louis lay on the floor of the conservatory, bleeding, dying. No one knew yet. Christmas morning. Louis was found at first light. Family members woke expecting routine, coffee, presents, children. Instead, they found him on the floor. Emergency services arrived quickly. Too quickly for hope. Paramedics worked in a space that suddenly felt too small, too ordinary for what had happened there. Death was pronounced. Outside, blue lights reflected off windows, still decorated with tinsel. The question came immediately, who would do this? She didn't run. Kirsty was arrested later that day. There was no chase, no evasion. She told police she couldn't remember what had happened, that she wasn't a violent person, that drink and drugs had blurred the night. Police listened. Evidence remained. Patterns in the past. As investigators reconstructed the timeline, the past resurfaced. Previous incidents, arguments that crossed lines, moments that, in isolation, might have seemed survivable. Together, they formed a pattern. This wasn't a sudden break, it was escalation. What the evidence shows, the taxi booking, the knife, the route taken, the timing, each detail replaced chaos with structure. This wasn't confusion, it was sequence. 12 strangers. At trial, the jury listened. They heard about jealousy, about fixation, about choice. They saw messages, timelines, ordinary objects turned permanent. They deliberated. They returned a unanimous verdict. Guilty, the weight of the verdict. Kirsty Carlis was sentenced to life imprisonment, a minimum of 25 years. The judge spoke of seriousness, of responsibility, of harm that could not be undone. Kirsty stood and listened, then she was taken away. Life without him. Louis Price was remembered as a father, a son, a presence. 6 children would grow up without him. Christmas would never sound the same again. What this case leaves behind. In Norton Keynes, the decorations came down. Life resumed, but the story stayed. A relationship that didn't end when it should have. A night that crossed a line. A decision that erased multiple futures, and the quiet truth beneath it all. Some endings don't arrive slowly, they arrive all at once.